This is a copy I did of a painting by Maurice de Vlaminck. It was done for a Russian man who had been advised by his insurance company to put the original into storage because it's quite valuable, and he commissioned me to paint this copy of it. Maurice de Vlaminck was one of the Fauve artists of 1904 to 8, along with Matisse obviously and André Derain. He was born in France in 1876 in Paris, and died in 1958, so he had a fairly decent innings. His parents were both musicians, and he himself actually played violin pretty efficiently and earned a living at it for quite a while during his younger days when he had a wife and a couple of children to support. He started painting in his late teens, I think, and he met André Derain on a train when he was 23. They did actually share a studio together for just over a year, shortly after Vlaminck had done national service actually, and just before Derain had to go and do his. So whether much was produced then, I don't know. I mean, Vlaminck wrote a lot of autobiographical stuff, but a lot of it's sort of rather vague and contradictory and probably not true. But I don't think there's much evidence that he produced much during that period, and nothing that would foretell the coming of the Fauvist movement. The Fauvist movement was so named because they had an exhibition at the Salon d'Automne in which I think a critic described the work as that of, fauve, wild animals, because the colours were very bright, and it was less about any sort of attention to detail and more about bright colour, and that's what characterised the movement. But Vlaminck himself, I mean, this painting, for example, is not brightly coloured. The colours are quite obviously rather muted, and his style, I mean, he was very influenced by Van Gogh although it's not that obvious in his work, he certainly wrote about being very excited by Van Gogh after seeing an exhibition of his, and that inspired him at least to use bright colour. But his later work was colours were more muted, more influenced by Cézanne actually. And this one, I don't know, the precise date, but it's obviously a later work. I mean, you can tell a certain amount about his dating of his work by the signatures he put on the paintings, because it changed a lot over the years. In the early days, it was, he's capital VLA and then Mink in small letters, and he was M de V at one point, de Vlaminck in capitals, sometimes in small letters. It changed considerably, but I think certainly after 1908, this was more his usual signature. Vlaminck, sort of handwritten, letters joined up, and but he carried on painting. He did go to London once, and in 1911 painted the Thames, but he was mainly in France, painting along the Seine a lot, and he was quite annoyed with. He didn't like Picasso. He didn't like the Cubist movement, which was taking over from Fauvism. He was also quite literary. I mean, he originally was showing indications that he might have had a career as a writer, and he wrote poetry certainly during World War One, I think, and he wrote, as I say, autobiographical stuff, which gives a certain indication of his life history, but also introduces a lot of confusion because it wasn't entirely factual, I think, as being concluded.